And welcome back to the Leeds Lens. We have got another news update for you today on this Monday morning for the Monday Night Football, and not the one on Sky Sports, the one where we talk all about Leeds United, of course. And we have got a few stories to get into today. We're going to talk a bit about Leeds United's link to Paredo. I believe Paredo is some Brazilian winger, sort of midfield player, plays for Internacional, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Joel Piroe. And to be honest with you, I've been wanting to talk about Piroe for a while, to the point where I actually made a video about Piroe about 2 weeks ago that I ended up never uploading because I didn't think it was quite right at the time. But I still want to go back to that and talk a bit about Joel Piroe and sort of where he's at this current climate, because I think Joel Piroe needs to find something that's to improve what's going on at Leeds United, because at the moment, in the current climate, I just don't see him getting minutes, which is really disappointing, because obviously he's a player that played well for us in the Championship, got us to the Premier League, but in terms of the current system and where we're at currently with our number 9s, he's our third choice number 9, so I just don't see his integration back into this starting 11 or even into a bench position unless there's injuries. And is that enough for Joel Piroe going forward? I think that's something that we're going to talk about as well. And also, I think when we talk about Piroe, we've got to look at sort of what we're going to do in January with him, because obviously he's still a player with a year and a half on his contract. We know his stock's still quite high. Is there something where potentially there's going to be movement with Joel Piroe for him moving on? Sebastian says, good evening. Good evening to you, Sebastian. I hope you're all looking forward to today's show. Obviously, there is Monday Night Football, which I'm battling with West Ham versus Everton, of course. Hopefully, Everton can do us a favour there. West Ham losing that first game under Nuno, with them playing Arsenal next week as well, could be very beneficial. But yeah, let's talk about the first story then, and let's talk about Paredo to Leeds United. And this came out from a local newspaper from the Brazilian side called Correio do Povo. I probably butchered that name. Hopefully not, but I probably did. And they've reported that Leeds United, Stuttgart and Atalanta have all sent scouts to watch Paredo in the U20 World Cup in Chile, which is quite interesting. These clubs see the tournament as a key opportunity for monitoring closely before potentially formalising an approach. Internacional are aware of growing interest, but have also not received any official offers yet. There were inquiries in the previous window, and the pressure is expected to increase in the coming months. The valuation is apparently around £17 million. What do I think of this situation, and what do I think about him as such? I think this is absolute nonsense, if I'm being totally honest. I think this is the usual situation which we have in these scenarios, where an agent is trying to get a move for a player. He obviously wants a European move, does Paredo. And what do? You drum up interest by throwing Leeds United in there, throwing Stuttgart in there, throwing Atalanta in there, throwing a few clubs where at the sort of level he probably want to go in at. And you sort of drum up interest for your client. And that is what a job of an agent is. Unfortunately, that means that obviously, and when we talk about the Leeds United news, we're naturally going to cover this. And when we talk about stories, and like we always do on this channel, naturally a lot of them are not going to be true. Like, it's the amount of players that Leeds United get linked to over the last sort of 12 months is ridiculous. And it will only continue to grow and grow, hopefully, as we progress up the Premier League and become a bigger name in the European market at this moment in time. Obviously, in the Championship, the spotlight isn't on you as much and you don't see as many links. But in the Premier League, naturally, you are going to be then mentioned a lot more for sort of players who drum up interest. But I just think this doesn't make any sense. I mean, he's a 20-year-old who they want 17 million for. We know Leeds United are quite stripped with cash. We're not going to go and spend 20 million on a developmental player from Brazil who's played in the under-20s. In the U20 World Cup tournament. That is just never going to happen. I know people sort of like the idea of youth products, and so do I. And I think that's hopefully, if we can establish ourselves as a Premier League club going forward, we can start to look at these sort of deals. And like we've seen with Forest this summer, where they brought in Igor Jesus, they brought in a few others as well from Botafogo. And I like the idea of youth development, and I like the idea that we're now looking into the South American markets. I think that's really beneficial for Leeds United, for sure. But in the same breath, even if that is a beneficial situation for Leeds, which I think it is, and if we are scouting, which hopefully we are, because we've seen the benefit of scouting in that region. I mean, look at sort of Brighton with the likes of Caicedo that they brought in, with the likes of Enciso that they brought in, with the likes of Buonanotte that they brought in. There is really, really good options when you look into that possible market. Even look at what Man City did a few years ago with Julian Alvarez, who they brought in from South America as well. That is a market that Leeds United need to look into and need to scout from. But Do I think this deal is believable, and do I think he's going to come to Leeds United? I'd be honestly as surprised as possible. Like I had the signing scale for anyone that was an OG in the summer, he'd be on a 0 for me. There's that little chance that he ends up coming to Leeds United. Sebastian says Piroe can play against Burnley, but in the Premier League he's not good enough. Selling to PSV in January, they have some striker issues. Yeah, we will get on to Piroe, but I just want to finish off this story regarding Paredo as well. So yeah, overall, I don't see this sort of concluding. I think when I look at sort of where Leeds United are going to need, in my opinion, and where if we are going to go into the transfer window and bolster this team, where we're going to need, I'd be looking at for the moment. I know I've talked about a number 10, but I quite like the balance of this midfield at the moment. I like the idea of Longstaff. I like the idea we've got Tanaka on the bench. I like the idea of Ampadu and Stack in there as well. I don't think we need to go and add another number 10 to this team. I think the midfield balance is bob on at the moment. I think it's spot on. I wouldn't be changing that at all. So for me, right at this moment in time, should be looking at a right winger and a number 9. That is where I think the sort of main target should come for Leeds United in this upcoming transfer window. And again, like we did in the summer, I'd be looking for people who have got experience in top 5 leagues that we can come in and do deals with. And we know, obviously, like we've talked about, that the best deals are going to be available in the January window, because a lot of clubs are more open to doing like loan with an obligation or loan with options in January, because obviously the loan isn't as long. So until they get the money, it's only about 6 months. So it's much more of an easier deal to do than it is for a loan with an obligation or a loan with an option at the start of a season. It's always been easier in January, and it will continue to be easier. So I think there will be deals for Leeds United to do in January for sure. I don't think it's going to be Paredo, though, in my opinion. And then when we talk about strikers, it obviously then leads into this Piroe debate. And that's where I've come up with this. I thought, let's bring back this discussion about Piroe and sort of where we're at with it. Because at this moment in time, obviously, we know that in the summer, obviously, over the last season, got 19 goals in the Championship, was phenomenal for Leeds United, was one of the reasons we got promoted to the Premier League. But it's just not working at this moment in time for Joel Piroe. And to be honest, a lot of people, me probably on this channel as well, if I'm being totally honest, I know the YouTubers on other channels as well, all have had this opinion. A lot of you guys in the comments are exactly the same. Is Piroe ever going to work in a Premier League structure for me? No, he's not. So I think we do need to probably move him on at this moment in time. I think that's probably the outcome. I do also think as well, when we look at sort of Piroe and his time at Leeds United, has he ever actually fit the system? And I don't think people talk about this enough. Obviously with Piroe, we always go, he's not going to work in the Premier League, he's not physical enough, and that's always been the thing. His physical attributes are never good enough, and that's a fair criticism, but that has been the criticism. But I want to talk more about Piroe and sort of, all right, yes, fine, his physical attributes are not there. But has he ever worked really in a Leeds United system? And I know that sounds crazy to say because he got 19 league goals, but he played up front last year for the team who won the league, and we created so many chances every game. It was beyond belief. So even though he wasn't the perfect fit, naturally because we were so much better than everybody else, he was getting tons of chances, and he was also managing to work just because of the dominance that Leeds United had. But did he ever actually fully fit the system? I'm not convinced he actually did, people. I'm not convinced he was the guy Daniel Farke ever wanted. And then I was looking back when I was sort of researching into this about when we bought Piroe and what happened. And at the time, everybody said this was an opportunity in the market for Leeds United. At the time, it was he going to sign a new deal at Swansea? Was he not going to sign a new deal at Swansea? That was the conversation. He then didn't sign a new deal at Swansea. He had 1 year left in his contract. All the Premier League clubs had already bought the strikers, and it was basically between us and Southampton. And we were like, wow, this guy's scored, 20-odd goals in the last few years in the Championship. Let's go get him and put him up front. He's a cut price deal because he's got 1 year left of his contract, and that is why we did it. And also at that point in time as well, there was loads of negativity around the club, which there was because of obviously the transfer window that just happened. And I think it was like a boosting sort of PR sign a bit from the 49ers to bring in Joel Piroe. And I still am not convinced to this day that it was the exact striker that Daniel Farke wanted. Because you remember that summer as well that we actually brought Joel Piroe in. We actually went for Cameron Archer first. And even in the January window just gone, the last January window, we went for Cameron Archer again, as we know. Obviously, he was the only sort of player we went for. And I look at it and I go, he's just never been wanted by Daniel Farke. And it's no doubt that now he's come in and he's brought 2 new strikers in, Daniel Farke, that we've now seen him drop to 3rd in the pecking order because he never fit a Daniel Farke system. Like, you look at the strikers that have worked for Daniel Farke sort of since he's been a manager. The obvious one is Teemu Pukki. Now, he's obviously a different profile to Calvert-Lewin, but they both still possess the same attributes in terms of, yes, Calvert-Lewin's got more to offer in terms of physicality presence, and in terms of a strength presence, and in terms of a sort of build presence. But in terms of the way he can run the channels and his physicality and what he can, and that running behind that we know he can offer, these are stuff that Joel Piroe physically cannot offer. And again, you look at who Daniel Farke wanted, Leeds United originally, and it was Cameron Archer. It wasn't Joel Piroe, because he wanted someone who could run in behind. That was the sort of striker Daniel Farke wanted. And then even if you look, when we actually bought Joel Piroe, if everyone remembers, at the start of Joel Piroe's tenure at Leeds United, he was actually getting used in the number 10 role, and we had Jorginho Rutter up front, because his first game actually was Ipswich away, I believe, and he played in that number 10 role with Rutter up front, and we had Nonto on the left, and we had Sinistera on the, we had Nonto on the right, should I say, and we had Sinistera on the left that day. But Piroe played in the 10, and then for ages at Leeds United, if you remember, again, the conversation in the press and on sort of forums online was all about why are we still playing Piroe in the number 10 and then playing Rutter up front when Rutter's a number 10 and Piroe's a striker. And eventually, after about 3 months of Piroe being at the football club, he finally swapped it round and put Piroe in the 10. He put Rutter in the 10 and Piroe up front, and the team got a lot better. And obviously, Rutter went on to have an unbelievable season. But again, I think that shows that not only did he not fully want Piroe, not only was it quite clearly an opportunity in the market, in my opinion, for Piroe, but even when he had Piroe, he used him in the number 10 role to start with. So that again suggests he never saw him as his out number 9. And now that takes us to where we are in today's climate and where we're currently at with Piroe. Third choice striker. Yes, he's had a good season in the Championship. But what we're going to do with him at this moment in time, because he's not, even if he comes on and even if he plays in games, and I think in games where we have high possession, he potentially can do a job for Leeds United. Like we saw in the first game against Everton on Monday Night Football, the way that he linked the play was really good. And I think when you look at sort of Piroe's best attributes, linking of the play and dropping into that number 10 role, where we don't currently have a number 10 because we play with sort of 2 number 8s and a number 6 in obviously Longstaff and Ampadu. We've got that sort of midfield of 2 number 8s and number 6. So naturally there is a space for the number 10 role for Joel Piroe to drop into, and we saw obviously in that first game it worked really well. But now we've seen Calvert-Lewin and we've seen what he offers to this Leeds United team. I think it's abundantly clear, in my opinion, that Calvert-Lewin's attributes just suit this team so much more. And to be honest with you, it's the point where if Calvert-Lewin was to get injured, I think we'd be in real trouble, genuinely, because I think what he can offer this Leeds United team, even over Nemetra, if I'm being totally honest, is so far superior and so advantageous to the way we're going to play. And he suits us so well. And now I get why they wanted Calvert-Lewin so much as well. But as I said, this goes back to Piroe. And he's just never going to feature in this Leeds United team at all. And it gets to a point where you've got a player right now at this moment in time who's just scored 19 goals in the Championship. We know he had offers in the summer from the likes of PSV, like Sebastian said earlier in the video, or early in the live stream. Is it time to offload Joel Piroe? And as I said, I just think the answer is yes, because what's going to happen, in my opinion, now is with Piroe is that, all right, he's not featured at this moment in time, but because he scored last year so many goals, his stock is still quite high. And if he's not going to feature and you've still got a high stock, then we've got to move him on. Because the problem I've got is, even if the worst case scenario happens to Leeds United this year and we get relegated, I still think we'd have a striker that Daniel Farke would prefer to Joel Piroe. So at what point is he ever going to be useful? Because I genuinely think if we had, I know as I said he had a good season last year in the Championship, did Joel Piroe, of course. But I genuinely think if you throw DCL up front in that particular team last year in the Championship, he might have got over 30 goals, genuinely, because he fits the system so much better. So much better than, of course, Piroe did. So yes, Piroe's output was good in the Championship, but again, I think that was more down, in my opinion, to the fact that we were so dominant in games, as opposed to Joel Piroe having an exceptional season individually, if that makes sense. That sounds harsh on Piroe, and that is not what I'm trying to do. I love what Piroe did for us last year, and he was brilliant, and getting top scorer is a great achievement. But tell me if Calvert-Lewin wouldn't have done better, if we're being honest, in the Championship. And tell me if a lot of, like, even a Josh Sargent, in my opinion, would have scored more goals for us last year in the Championship. I think, personally, would have done. I've never, ever, by the way, underestimated Piroe's ability to finish a ball. We know he's a top finisher. It's his all-round game that's always going to be an issue for us. He never gets in the right positions because he's always too deep, because he likes to link the play. And even when he goes further on and he pushes up, even though he's a cold finisher and he's a quick finisher, he just doesn't. He's never going to keep up to the speed of the game, because he never has done. Sebastian says sell for 15 to 20 million and buy another attacking player. This is my feeling, Sebastian. This is honestly my feeling. It's nothing against Piroe. It's more to do with the system. And if we're going to keep Daniel Farke as the manager, which I know some of you guys don't want to do, but if we are going to keep Daniel Farke as the manager, you've got to back him. And we've seen that he doesn't want Piroe, so for me, you've got to move him on. I don't think it'd be as high as 15 to 20 million though. I think with Piroe with 1.5 years left on his contract, when he's currently our third choice striker, I think potentially looking at around the £10 million mark, which again, because he's now only got 1 year half left on his contract, that would still bank a profit for Leeds United in this current climate. So actually doing that wouldn't be the worst idea in the world. But the problem is, if we don't sell him in January, and this is where I'm sort of wrapping around to, if we don't sell Piroe in January, what's going to end up happening is he's only going to have 1 year left on his contract in the summer, and therefore he's going to go on a cut price deal. And the only way to stop him having 1 year left of his contract is to offer him a new deal. And we don't want to be offering Joel Piroe a new deal, in my opinion, because that could turn into a bit of a nightmare, then not being able to shift him on. So for me, the best outcome, really, for all parties, and Piroe's sake as well, by the way, because Piroe's a decent guy, he's done a good job for us. But we don't just sat there rotting, do we? We want him to go out and play football. So even for Piroe's sake, I'd be knocking on the manager's door and saying, look, where am I? I'm currently seeing the strikers you brought. If I'm Piroe, this is what I'm saying to the manager. If you want an outside statement, I am saying to Daniel Farke, if I am Joel Piroe, I've seen the strikers you've recruited in the summer. Where do I currently fit into your plans? And if I'm third choice, I don't want to be third choice. I've had a great year in the Championship. I want to move on while I've got really good offers on the table, which he still has. Probably the best offers that he'll ever have in his career, if we're being totally honest. And get that move and get himself to PSV. And that is what I'd be saying if I'm Joel Piroe, to be honest. But it's a shame of it. It's a bit of a shame of a sort of situation. But Piroe's done his job for us. He's been a fantastic team that have got promoted. He's been the top scorer. He's done what we bought him for. It's just this extra next level of what we've seen with Ampadu and what we've seen with Bogle. Where can they step up to the Premier League? I think we all know, really, and I think even the most hardcore Piroe fans, for the most part, have all thought, all right, fine, but are we expecting him to adapt to this Premier League season? No. And also, as well, if you move Piroe on, which is what's interesting with this, if you move him on and you get the sort of £10 million mark, which I'm hoping you do get for Piroe at least, you can bring in someone of real quality, because it obviously gives Leeds United that wiggle room with PSR, which is massive for us. And it allows us to go get a striker that actually fits the system. Move on a striker that doesn't really fit the system, bring in a striker that does. It's the most obvious thing in the world, in my opinion. As I said, I don't want it to be a knock on Piroe, because he's never he doesn't seem like the character to start refusing to play like we've seen from Leeds United's play in the past, forcing a move like that American lad Tyler Adams played against us at the weekend. They got absolutely schooled in there by our midfield, by the way, but that's regardless. He's not like one of them. He never will be, because he's not that sort of character. And you've got to respect him for that. But he must feel frustrated, the fact that he's worked his way to get himself into the Premier League, but it was never going to work. But that's modern day football. We can't just give him a place just because he's got us here. That gets you relegated, I'm afraid. It does get you relegated. And as I said, when he's not gonna fit, I don't know. That is where I'm currently at. Sebastian says, I fully agree. Yeah, it's a tricky situation to make. And as I said, the timing when I first started to do this wasn't quite right, and I was trying to argue it from a different standpoint, which I didn't really believe. So yeah, I think that for me, Piroe is probably a move on, unfortunately. So yeah, anyway, that's going to be the shorter stream today. One of the shortest streams I've probably ever done. But there was not much going on in the day, and I wanted to cover Piroe, and I don't want to go on and on about it, but I think that is my standpoint. Obviously, if you're watching live, please drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Does massive up the channel. And also, as well, I have got lives for the rest of this week, always at 8 PM, like I always say. So we've got an 8 PM one tomorrow. We've got an 8 PM one on Wednesday. Unfortunately, it will not be here on Thursday, so an 8 PM. But Friday, 8 PM as always. Saturday, I'll be straight after the game. And Sunday, 8 PM. So a week of 8 PMs, really, to look forward to. Again, so that should be really good. Yeah. Where is the other audience? Yeah, it's a quieter day, I think, because obviously the football is on currently. And also, what is the score in that? Should we have a look? What is the actual score? Everton are winning, so that's good. Michael Keane scored, if anyone cares. So that's good, because obviously we want West Ham to lose. So presumably West Ham have conceded another set piece. So even though they've brought in Nuno, still conceding set pieces, maybe it wasn't Potter's fault after all. Anyway, as I said, thanks all for watching. And yeah, if you could drop a like, subscribe as well, that would be fantastic. Because I'm only a small channel, naturally, if the more likes I get, it really helps me compared to bigger channels. So if you could do that as well, that would be brilliant. Thanks all for watching.